to Startup Grind. My name is Lauren Baxter, and I'm the director of Startup Grind. We are so excited to be joined with Kenneth Mims tonight, founder and CEO of Science Prep Academy. Really cool. It's a little bit different Startup Grind than we've done. As an educator myself, I'm just thrilled to have Kenneth on tonight. And we will get started in just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and recognize our sponsors. Hool Curry Law is our primary sponsor. And I tell you what, if you are an entrepreneur and you don't have a lawyer, heads up, you need one. And the guys at Hool Curry Law and gals are an amazing team, and they will answer any questions that you have. If you want to reach out to them, tell them that Startup Grind sent you. Connor always says, what kind of stupid questions do you have to ask? There's no stupid questions. So check them out. If you're thinking about starting something or already in the midst of starting something, they work primarily with entrepreneurs, and they're based here in Arizona, so they know the environment. Our second sponsor is Downtown Phoenix. They are the go-to one-stop shop for anything downtown. So it's a nonprofit that works in downtown, and if you are just an individual that wants to check out what's happening in downtown, you can go stop by their office. Or if you're a business and you want to know about event space, post-COVID, office space, they can help you out. So big thank you to them for sponsoring us this year. And lastly, our partners, Galvanize, SeedSpot, and Yes PHX. This is our second to last Startup Grind this year. Our last one will be December 12th with Canal Partners, a local VC firm. And the last announcement, I am actually looking for my replacement. After 2 years of volunteering for Startup Grind, it is time for me to pass the microphone and baton to someone else. So if you're interested in hosting and you love events, you love talking to people, and you're just really curious, reach out to me. It's Lauren at Startup Grind, and I have an application for you and can tell you more about it. So without further ado, since we have no audience questions, the great news about these events that are virtual are you can join us live or you can watch the recording on YouTube. So tonight we'll be talking with Kenneth for a few minutes, about an hour, and then if we have any questions at the end, we'll wrap up with that. But let's get started. So I have started since the pandemic with a few questions about the current environment before we kick into what makes you you. As a founder and educator, I definitely have a follow-up question to this. How are you dealing with all of these challenges, both professionally and personally?
Yeah, that's a great question. Being in the education field as a teacher, principal, superintendent, it's very challenging, very challenging. It's not the same, as, working in the hospital, being a nurse or a firefighter, but it's very similar,
Yeah.
So, we have to be very empathetic for our students, for our families, but then also for our staff. So it's really been, a challenge. So we've transitioned to online learning, and, it's really a new world. It's a new world order. It's, how we operate and different considerations of our staff, of our families. It's really, it takes a different perspective. So we're just trying to adjust to that. Professional wise, for myself, we all adjusted to the meetings, but there's a degree that I'm realizing of a balance that is just a challenge at times. Mm-hmm. If it's from meetings, if it's from just being burnt out, stretching yourself too much, sensory, deprivation as far as not receiving, like something little like going to the cafeteria, or some people going to Starbucks, or just going to work, catching a train to work. Those are, physical things that your body, your sensory, your nerve system really needs. And I think, just trying to figure that out has definitely been a challenge. So yeah, every day is a struggle, honestly. Every day is a struggle, but there's opportunities as well.
Well, and as educators, you look forward to the days people bring in the donuts or something. Like, I hope someone's bringing you something tasty and sweet.
And you look forward to seeing the kids, seeing their smiles, having those relationships with the parents when you see them, when they drop off the kids, those stories. And honestly, those are things that we're really missing,
Mhm.
and so it's kind of hard for us to gauge, our performance as a school because we have become disconnected, with the students and with the home. So it's a funny zone that we find ourselves in, and so I'm not really happy about the current situation. That's all I can say. But for most of us, we're not.
But you're adapting. You're
Yeah,
adapting. And for Science Prep Academy, before we dig too deep into it, can you give us a short synopsis of the school that you have created and
yeah,
why you created it? Because we'll dig deep in later, but just for people who are watching right now in live.
yeah. So we're a Science Prep Academy. We're a STEM middle school and high school for students that are neurodiverse with autism. And we believe students that have autism or that are neurodiverse, they can actually become computer scientists. So we created a curriculum and a pathway for them to master content, but also the social emotional development and support that they need for them to transition into a STEM career. And we're based in South Mountain in South Phoenix, and we've been around for 4 years, going on 5 years now.
Congratulations. Such a great thing you kicked off. So my last question for the current environment is what anyone on here or watching later wants to know. Do you have any tips for parents who are acting as educators right now?
Yeah, actually, I do. I have quite a few tips, and they're really the basics, and sometimes they're overlooked. But
Mhm.
we find that just having that schedule, having that schedule and committing to a schedule, and I mean going to sleep at a certain time, waking up at a certain time, staying in the habits as far as hygiene, and just staying in the habits as far as a typical day. But also for our students, having the opportunity to on weekend trips, taking a trip, taking what they call it a staycation, or maybe just going to a hotel or driving up to the Grand Canyons or Sedona or Tucson, just to break things up, I think is very important. But in addition, as far as the learning environment, having a learning environment,
Yes.
having a desk, having a designated computer, those things are very important. And the parents, they need an opportunity to decompress as well, which means parents need to have their me time to some degree.
Alone time. Yeah. Put your kids
Yeah.
to bed early. They all need sleep anyway.
Yeah. Stay on schedule. So yeah.
Well, thank you for those. I'm sure any parents out there are like, oh, yeah, I forgot about those.
Yeah.
So we're going to take it back to you when you were younger, because I always like to dig into the minds of entrepreneurs and see how they tick. So when you were growing up, just smallest recollection, what did you or who did you want to be, or what profession did you want to get into? What was one of your first choices? And I always like to hear what it is.
Yeah. So I have a wonderful mother. So at the early age, she was really invested to her children, and she provided me the opportunity to go to a space camp at a local college.
Ow!
Yeah,
Where was it?
I'm sorry.
Where was it?
It was at a local community college, and
Okay.
I grew up in South Jersey, and I remember going, and it might have been in partnership with NASA or some type of NASA program, and I just knew I was going to grow up and be an astronaut. I
Awesome.
just knew,
Yeah.
yeah, I just knew it. My bedroom at the time, so I maybe 8, 9, something like that. My bedroom had pictures of astronauts and all around, and yeah, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't going to be an astronaut. Um, so that really sparked that scientific curiosity and just a way of thinking. And so yeah, I have to say that probably was the first time that I started identifying a career and
Nice.
something that I enjoyed.
Yeah. Is there anything that you learned in space camp that you still remember to this day?
The biggest thing I remember working with other teams, and at that time, you know, I don't think I was really good at working in teams. We disagreed. We fought over materials, fought over ideas. But looking back at it, it was really good because, working in team is really, it's challenging for everybody, but,
Yeah.
the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Especially early exposure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, did you have any entrepreneurial habits growing up?
Yeah. Looking back at it, I didn't really realize it till,
We never do. The rock
yeah,
shops.
yeah, I didn't realize it, but I think around 8 or 9, around the same age, maybe younger actually. I remember in Walmart, and I walked by a basket of like ice pops. Is that what they call it? Ice pops.
Oh,
You
the
put them in,
tube ones? Yeah. You
yeah,
put them in the freezer?
put
Delicious.
them in the freezer. And I remember I looked at the prices at 288, something like that. And I said, 288. There's 100 of them. So if I sold each one for a quarter, how much would that? I don't even think I could. I'd add it up. I said that'd be a lot of money. That'd be a lot of money. So I said, Dad, my dad was my first investor. So I said, Dad, can you buy this for me? So he brought it. He's always been very supportive, investing in my ideas. So I took it home, put it in the freezer, and I set up a table in front of the driveway. And so as my local friends in the neighborhood walked by, I informed them that I was selling ice pops.
Yeah.
And nobody brought any. The only question that I got was, why would we buy them from you and we can buy them from the store? And I said, because they're here now and they're cold.
And they're frozen, and you can get them now. And I have scissors.
Yeah, right. But no, the person was my best friend. He said, let me just get one for free. I was just like, I was confused. It's not a good business practice. But looking back at it, that entrepreneurial spirit really has been with me, since then.
Yeah.
And it's been a journey.
I love those stories. Other than your parents, who seem to be very nurturing in your entrepreneurial and your education, were there any other influences in your life looking back? Anyone you looked up to or followed?
Yeah, it really has to go back to my mother. She actually had a daycare in the house.
There we go.
Yeah,
Business
my
owner.
father converted the garage to a daycare. So as a child, as a child growing up in the house, I witnessed my mother operating a business in the home, the relationships that she had with the parents, the customers, dealing with different challenges, different issues, watching, the up and the down, and, looking back at it, she was really my first, model of being an entrepreneur and just having that confidence to go in and do it and ride it out. So I didn't realize that until I got older, that, it was really my mom that laid that foundation.
I love that. What a strong woman.
Yeah.
So after Space Camp, share a little bit about your early passions for science and technology and how you continue to develop that before going to college.
Yeah. Again, the story really goes back to my mother. She was really, invested, but for some strange reason, I had a big curiosity with small electric motors. So, like Radio Shack motors.
Yeah.
Basically, you connect them to like a little batteries, I think 9-volt batteries, and they spin. And, I would ask my mom, hey, take me to Radio Shack, buy me a motor. I don't know where I got this. And then one day I threw it. I remember throwing it on the ground. I just was so curious about, like, how does this work?
Yeah.
Threw it on the ground, I broke it open, and I saw that it had a coil wire and then magnets, that E&M, electricity and magnetism thing going on. And I just was like, what in the world? How can this cause motion? And, but it was just that aspect of like discovery, investigation, just trying to figure out stuff. And I think ever since then, I just, and then my mom kind of fed it to some degree in a constructive way. But yeah, just looking at small motors, and just trying to figure out how can you turn electricity into emotion, and then I just, never stop questioning and trying to figuring out like the answer based upon some type of science principle. So I later, I went on, to get a physics degree
Hmm.
my undergraduate degree, and just kept going with just asking questions.
And why physics?
It's funny. Honestly, I studied physics because it gave me the opportunity just to sit in class and think.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Honestly, I said, "Oh wow, I can really just sit and think."
it's like the
And
philosophy for scientists.
yeah, really, yeah. I mean, it was crazy to think about it, but when I heard that, figured that out, and then just things worked out. I was able to do a lot of research
Hmm.
under as an undergrad in experimental physics. So I started working with material development, semiconductor material, as far as silicon growth, material growth. And I just got my hands on some optics, crystals, and it kept me busy. So, yeah, I never looked back after that.
That's very cool. So you're getting out of college,
Yeah,
and I think you shared with me that you had visited Silicon Valley, correct?
yeah, yeah. So I was
So
doing
tell me
research.
about that visit, because that really shaped what you thought you wanted to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was crazy. So I was doing research in the research team up for my professor. We publish research. So with that comes sharing your research at conferences. So we had a
Mhm.
conference at Berkeley, I remember, and my professor was like, "Yeah, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Get it together, get your poster together, get your presentation." And it was good, a good group of people. But being at Berkeley, at that time, it was around Silicon, the tech bubble.com time.
Mhm.
So the energy out there it was powerful,
Yeah.
especially being an undergrad. It was the biggest thing on earth at that time. And we went to AMD Applied Material Labs, where they were, manufacturing wafers. So we did a little visit. I'm just like, man, good Lord, this is,
Get me
crazy.
out of
Everybody,
college now.
yeah, yeah. So I knew the funny thing about it, I knew I was going to go to Silicon Valley and start a tech company because that's what everybody was doing. I mean, people were just, making, whatever IPOs and, so I thought, but I remember this professor that I had, uh, it was like one of my last classes, and he was like, yeah, that sounds okay, but I want to teach you guys a computer programming course. And I was dumb. Man, what do I need to learn a computer programming class for? I'm going to Silicon Valley and going to make wafers. Like, what's wrong with this guy?
He knows nothing.
That was the worst decision of my life, not to really dive deep into like computer programming. At that time, I had took some programming courses. They were more like out of date, but he was
Yeah.
trying to teach us like Java at the time, which was kind of like
New
it was kind
age.
of yeah, yeah, yeah. Like,
Mhm.
Java, what Java? It's coffee. What are you talking like, man? This guy is outdated, but like that's life. Now I'm
Yeah.
very interested in computer science and teaching kids computer science and learning myself.
Wow. And that you can probably trace that back to that moment. That's really interesting. So after, the tech bubble burst right after you graduated, so how did this impact your future? What did you go on to do?
Yeah. So the funny thing about it was like the summer that I graduated, the summer I was actually had an internship at Bell Labs in Murray Hill, New Jersey, which is really like the premier research lab where a lot of great discoveries was. And but that summer they laid off 30,000 employees, including the mentor that I was working for. I remember coming into the lab. Well, first of all, every week Friday we were going to like wine and cheese events for staff that were actually what I later realized they were being forced to retire. After like 30 years.
Mm.
You had a lot of 30-year professionals, researchers. And I'm like, man, these guys are just living the life. Like every Friday, just wine and cheese, wine and cheese.
Yeah.
But one day, my mentor, she came in the lab and she was crying. I'm like, what in the world's going on? And she was, provided the information that she had to, retire and, take the package. And she said, you got to walk the hallways and find another researcher. So that was my, initiation into like the tech world. And that's kind of like what started me thinking like about this reality of the tech world and it has a lot of positives and growth and opportunity for innovation. But there's a bigger story. Um,
Mhm.
the tech bubble burst at that time, and I just had an undergraduate degree in physics. So, in no form or fashion was I competitive for like positions that people with a PhD in physics, would compete with me. So, so a friend of my father, my family had a charter school in Philadelphia.
Here comes education.
Yeah, and honestly, I knew I had student loans that were due in a couple months, and
Yeah.
we were having dinner, and I asked, she was a professor at the Temple University, special education, and I just said, hey, would you need, the support of somebody with a background in physics? And she was like, oh yeah. And
Oh
I'm just
my
like,
gosh, science teachers are like in need all the time.
yeah, yeah. But I had no idea what I was getting into. So this school was in Philadelphia,
Yep.
very urban, high crime, poverty, drugs, all that. I had no idea what I was getting into. And but I did it, and I became passionate about it. I felt that I could relate to the youth, and but it was a challenging experience because my background was in physics, classically, a scientist. I didn't know about education, and I never took an education course at that time. So I was
Well,
teaching like my professors,
yeah,
straight
and
from the book.
here's a little clue for you. I was in art education, and they don't teach you discipline.
Yeah,
Nope, you just get thrown to the wolves. And they're
yeah,
like, good luck, but we taught you a lot of theory.
yeah, yeah. So it became a lot of experimenting, and a lot of my experiments didn't work out.
Yeah.
Didn't work out at all. Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
have any memory you want to share? Any funny stories?
Oh man, funny stories. No,
No
it was
kindergarten cop moments?
kindergarten. Uh, it's more, it's more. It leads to really, really where my passion really was sparked at. At that
Mhm.
time, it was in the urban environment, and
Yeah.
I grew up in the suburbs. I didn't really know what I thought I knew, but I didn't know. But I
Yeah.
remember it was a young lady. She was in kindergarten, and I was very passionate about helping all my kids become scientists because that's what I was, and I wanted. And I still to this day, I want all kids to become scientists. Kindergartner, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? I went around the whole classroom, a firefighter, astronaut, blah, blah. And this one young girl says, I want to be a lawyer. I'm like, oh, baby doll, oh, that is so beautiful.
Yeah.
How do you want to be a lawyer? She said, looked me dead in my eyes, said, I want to be a lawyer so I can help get my father out of jail.
Oh, that breaks your heart.
And
Yeah.
I was still young, and I'm just like, wow, of of a kindergartner, a 5, 6 year old.
Yeah.
And so it pushed my mind to start to look at the role of educators in a different way. That we educators are really in the trenches with the community.
Yep.
It started just forcing me to mature a little bit and take that role of an educator a little more seriously, unfortunately. So yeah, it was a
Yeah.
wake up call.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I
Yeah.
mean, you're sometimes you're serving as their only adult mentor, which is just mind blowing to think about, which at 22 I wasn't thinking about either, but it's so powerful. So
Yeah.
your dreams of IPOing a tech company are moved into education. Um, did you ever have any regret, like, oh, I want to be doing this, or were you like, no, I'm committed to education. This is the path. Did you know right away?
Yeah, I can't say I did. And I have to be honest about that. Really looking back at it, that time period was more of I was in a more of a depressive state.
Mm,
If you really look at it when you're talking about someone, being passionate, making a transition to something like the tech world and starting companies. I had a lot of hope and ambition and high expectations for myself. And unfortunately, educators and people in the education sector, for the most part, are not really valued to that degree.
Oh yeah.
As teachers.
Yeah. I've been there. Yeah.
I was living at home with my mom, with my parents rather, for the first couple of years of being an educator. My salary was in the low 20s,
Mm.
and I'm just being honest, so, you know, I had to really find my self-worth. I had to find my value. And it was a struggle. It's a struggle. It was a challenge. So, um, so my value, understanding my value really, grew with understanding the role of an educator, because a lot of times we equate your value to your salary, right? And
Mm-hmm.
since teachers really don't really get paid what they're worth, it could be a challenge as far as really making that connecting the dots on the worth of a teacher. And it took me about 5 years. It wasn't until later until I transitioned and moved down to Georgia, and was just in a different environment, and I was able to connect the dots and see how I could move forward and be progressive as an educator, and really made a transition to a community leader. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where I started to become a school board member, and really connect the dots as far as the role of a teacher outside of the building, outside of the classroom, and in the community, right?
Well, and hopefully people after this year will be rethinking how much they pay teachers after teaching their own children. But I love that you had the back end perspective. You pushed yourself to go on the school board. What did you see from the back end that changed you as a teacher and continued to foster that entrepreneurial spirit?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My transition into the school board and I was young. I was still at about 24 years old. So I was
That's
young.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing that you did
I
that.
looking back at it, I would say I still was a baby. I was living
Mm-hmm.
home with my parents, and just the opportunities opened up, for that to take place. I had the support of my parents, support of the community. Um, but once I got into the school board, I started to see the aspects of policy, politics, uh, and finances, and the role that plays. And that's totally different from perspective of a teacher, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Teachers love kids. They love what they do. They want to see their kids succeed and be successful in life, and which is great. But the business of education is something different. So that was the first time where it forced me to look at the business of education. So we had I don't know, a $13 million budget, maybe 100. No, it was more than 13. Maybe
In
100
Philly
million.
or in Georgia?
Uh, and when I was in New Jersey,
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
yeah. When I got down to Georgia, that their budget was $2 billion a year because they had 160,000 kids. You
Wow.
know, so but before that, just seeing that, oh wow, we're talking about 100 million. We're talking about contracts.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about vendors. We're talking about staff. We're talking about teachers. We're talking about human lives, families.
Yeah.
Talking about kids. So that was very interesting and really opened my eyes. And I really could never just go back to really having the perspective of a teacher and just being like focused on my classroom. So it forced me to be have a perspective that I could never just go back to. So it was always with me once I had that experience. But it was very challenging. The political aspect, the policy, the unions, those type of things play a part in progress and moving forward with its issues. You have to be very political at times.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm seeing the building blocks for your own school coming together, all of these experiences. So you moved to Georgia and teach in a bigger, obviously much bigger school district. You had a question from a student that changed your career trajectory. That's the question that made the vision that you have now move forward. Can you share a little bit about that story?
Yeah. So I got down to Georgia, a great school district, really one of the best in the nation. Gwinnett County Schools, $2 billion a year budget, 160,000 kids. Learned a lot, but one particular year I was what's called a inclusion teacher, which means I would teach a classroom that had students who had learning disabilities included into the general learning environment. So this was new. I really wasn't prepared for it, but I had a new student, and I was doing my typical PowerPoint presentation. Very excited and engaged. And actually, at that time, most students really weren't. This was a little bit earlier. Before every kid had cell phones and the internet and apps. Kids really wasn't seeing a connection between that they had the potential to be scientists or to even be literate as far as technology. But this young man, he answered the question, raised his hand. I forget what the question was, but when he answered, I just was like, "Oh my God, that is right. Who is this young man?" Like,
You're the
what?
one I've been waiting for.
Yeah, it was really like that. And he was new. He had an extra teacher, which is what they call a paraprofessional. I noticed that at lunchtime, he sat by himself. And he just didn't understand the social and emotional norms of an eighth grade middle school classroom. So I went around the building and asked, who is this gentleman? What's his learning disability? And speaking with the special ed director, and I was informed that he had autism. Never heard that word before at that time. And I started doing. I was working on a master's degree at that time in education, and I started doing my research, papers, and just focusing on everything of autism. And quickly, I recognized that the characteristics of autism, or people with autism, reminded me of actually myself, but my peers in the physics community. And what I mean by that is a natural love for the nature of science, analytical problem solving, focus on things for a very long time, thinking outside the box, but also the challenges, which is social, emotional, communication, anxiety, and what they call theory of mind. So if you look at people like, Bill Gates, Wozniak, Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Einstein, and the typical many people in the tech community, they display characteristics of what we call now as neurodiversity. And neurodiversity may include anxiety, AD, attention deficit issues, dyslexia, being dyslexic, and a host of other neurological or what they call neurodiversity. Things are starting to change, but at that time, I saw something that really, many people really didn't see, and few are just starting to see it now. But now I've been able to talk to people like Temple Grandin, who speaks at Google, at Microsoft, who engages at that level, and I've been able to engage at that level to really confirm that. So now we're over the hurdle as far as that saying, saying that people with autism or neurodiversity have the capacity to be professionals or tech professionals. Now we're really just focused on, well, how can we create a pathway and how to support them. So,
now let's see what we can do with it.
Yeah. But that started, started with that one particular student.
Wow. And so, that completely changed the trajectory of even your master's degree in your education. After that, what inspired you to move to Arizona? So how did that move along to our beautiful desert state?
Yeah. So a little bit of, background before the move. While I was in Georgia or, outside Atlanta area, I was very passionate about starting schools. So, always been an education entrepreneur to some degree. And I petitioned for a charter school.
Oh, I did not know. You either told me this and I don't remember.
Yeah.
See, this is fun for me too.
I didn't tell you that. So it was with Atlanta Public Schools. So at that time, put in a petition. Atlanta Public Schools denied the petition. With charter schools, you have to put in a petition to the authorizing board. Okay. Sometimes it's it depends on the state. It may be the local school district. It may be a university that has that power, or it may be the state. And at that time, Georgia actually had to change their constitution as far as the definition of the word charter, as far as charter school. And, once they did that, they were able to, take requests for charter petitions. Make a long story short, went to the state level, was denied again. And, that really opened up my eyes to looking at a charter school and realizing that, what that process looks like.
Yeah.
And then once you do get authorized, you still have to get reauthorized every 3 years.
Wow.
But the reality of it is that charter schools are underfunded by at least $250,000 annually, right? So, I was just really started pondering this, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just knew that maybe charter schools wasn't the option. And I really got passionate about the autism thing, so I started, studying at ASU in a particular field called applied behavior. There's a particular certification called a certified behavior analyst, which focuses on a particular pedagogy that science shows helps to modify behaviors. And that's really the foundation of our school and the foundation of a lot of things of everything that I do as far as positive behavior reinforcement. So I started a program at ASU, and I just say, hey, maybe let's consider, maybe relocating to Arizona. And I did, and I was studying at ASU, and I started working at some private schools. It's a private school in North Scottsdale, actually, with kids for autism, and I quickly realized that my capacity would be able to benefit parents, in the valley. So that's really what led me to Arizona, and then led me to, starting the school.
So this just, to me, I'm breaking this down as a typical founder story. You kind of tried and failed a few times before you got to where you are. Just for other entrepreneurs that may be watching this call or watch this later, it doesn't happen overnight. So even in education or something different, it can all relate. So you started Science Prep Academy 4 years ago. And you started it following the lean startup method. And correct me if I'm wrong, you went through Seed Spot. What prompted you to do that and follow the lean startup method? I mean, it's such a great method, and a lot of entrepreneurs have such success with it, but I don't know if educators are as familiar with it, just from the traditional standpoint.
Yeah. That's a great question. I think really what led me to the lean startup model was really just my curiosity from the tech community.
Yeah.
So, you hear about lean startup in the tech community often, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
But it just was a blessing that, Seed Spot, was based in Phoenix, at the time. And, I'm not sure really how, we crossed paths, but I think I just saw a opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
It was really an opportunity that was in partnership with Social Venture Partners, SVP at the time. They had a particular cohort, and they had a cohort where that will go through Seed Spot as the capstone of their project. And I was just fortunate to get into that particular class, that cohort. And the biggest thing that I learned from Seed Spot was really, what can you do now to get started? What pivot can you take now to get started? I really remember, I love the people. I love the people at Seed Spot, really do, Lauren and everybody else over there. But that was the number one question, Kim. What can you do now to get started? Because at that time, I really had a vision as far as 1,000 kids or 100 kids, and and that's kind of like your typical thought with schools. Everything's big, but they were really, what can you do now? So from a lean startup model, what can you really do now? With with validating your particular your vision, your product, and and what market, what's the market that you can really access. And I think from that mentality, it really, if I wouldn't have taken that approach, I wouldn't have started, because
I was just gonna say, caught in fear, like it's not big enough, I can't do it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that really makes no sense. It makes no sense at all, because just because you can't start with 100 doesn't mean that you just don't start. If you start with one, and that's what I realized, if you start with one person or five,
Yeah.
that's really just like with an app. If you start an app and you have one user, okay, well, that one user can start to 5 and 10, and you really don't want to start with 100 or 1,000, because you'll lose the opportunity, of a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
because things have to improve, and you need that feedback, So once you get your product or your innovation to a certain point, now you can move forward with scaling, and that's really, the biggest takeaway from this particular project using Lean Startup, that we didn't scale, and we chose not to scale in the typical trajectory, as far as most charter schools are schools, which is more schools are more students, more kids in chairs, because once you start scaling, that consistency, that duplication is really, you have to have the resources.
Yeah.
You have to have the financial capacity, but also you have to have the human capacity, and you have to have the systems and the structure. And and if you don't, you can totally lose the opportunity that you may never be able to get back, right? So really, it caused us to move in a direction to pause from looking at scaling as far as numbers and dollars,
Mm-hmm.
and looking at scaling as far as sharing our innovation with the world, and how can we do that, which is the mission, of our organization, which is to create that pathway for individuals with autism to make that transition in the STEM. So as long as we're doing that, as long as we stay on mission, then we're gaining equity. And so for nonprofits, it's a little bit different as far as that, that mission-driven approach compared to the, a bottom line, approach. But the lean process of thinking and strategy is still the same, and it is still very relevant.
Wonder what it would look like if all schools were built with that.
You know,
Yeah,
that's a really good point, and I'm very upset to some degree because unfortunately, I have a lot of good friends in school financing, as far as bond financing for buildings, great people, but unfortunately, it has has compromised the mission of schools,
mm-hmm.
because charter schools and schools receive their bond financing based upon the projected enrollment of students. So it forces them to increase, to set a high target as far as enrollment, and then to do everything that has to be done to achieve that.
Yep.
And so what that does is that, looking from a lean startup model, that totally, can compromise, your product, and validating your product, and working out the kinks, and making sure that you have an effective product. So it's kind of, and then, that's one thing that really kind of, rubs me the wrong way, that, that I've seen, a lot of schools go into that path. But, that's just one thing that I didn't want to, do, and put the organization in. Yeah.
So I'll repeat that again, that you said to all of the people watching this now or later, what can you do now to get started? I needed to hear that tonight. So thank you. I like that. Such great. So you've created some partnerships for your school. What is the future vision, and what do you want these partnerships to do for not only your school and your students, but also the community?
Yeah. So, we've been very fortunate to make a lot of great partnerships. One of the first partnerships was really with Salvation Army Croc Center down in South Mountain. We've been able to partner with them for since the beginning. We've been able to, we were with Galvanize since the beginning of Galvanize. But also recently, we've been able to partner with ASU, Arizona State University, and their college of education, and some other colleges to really start doing research. So one pivot that we have made recently is really to start to, look at research. How can we share what we're doing, with the local community, national community, and eventually international community? And we started doing that by, working with universities like ASU and doing research. And so we're looking forward to, sharing our research, through publications and conferences, and eventually, spread that, that insight, to help, benefit the local community. and we're in the process of partnering with school districts as well.
I was just going to say, that's your way of scaling. It's just,
Yeah.
it doesn't look like more students. It looks like more things that can help everybody.
Yeah, yeah. So instead of us with schools and and students, we can scale through our partnerships, right?
Yes.
Be it public schools, private schools, charter schools, school districts, eventually, companies that have a workforce that are of individuals that are neurodiverse, because really our innovation, can be transferable not only to schools, but to companies, because our model, the vision of our model was to prepare students to make that transition into the workforce, and we really want to make that transition to start to open up those conversations, with companies and to help support them. So, that's where we're at right now. So we're really excited about this partnership with ASU. We're working on some grant opportunities, and we're looking at acquiring some federal grants as well.
Amazing. Love that. Can you tell me a little bit more about the fellowship that you are a part of? You also have some personal growth going on too.
Yeah. So that's really. Oh yeah, definitely. So part of this vision as far as scaling, and part of this opportunity that I had in Washington D.C. to participate in a fellowship called the Albert Einstein Fellowship. It's funded by the Department of Energy, and it's basically where they take STEM education professionals and they place them at different agencies. So some may be with NASA, NSF, Navy research labs, and also some on the House and Senate, on Capitol Hill. And I was very fortunate to be placed on the House. And I was actually in the house in the office of Representative Ruben Gallego. So it just worked out where I was able to be in an office of a local legislator in Arizona, working supporting as a legislative fellow. And so this gave me an opportunity to really look at the role that research, or that the practice of education teachers play with research, but then also with policy, and seeing those dynamics, and seeing how our research and our innovation, how we can communicate and advocate for what we see is best for our students that are neurodiverse, but also in general for all students, as it relates to getting on a pathway for a STEM workforce. So, it really gave me a lot of insight. But I'll tell you what, it also gave me a lot of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And looking back from a teacher, because this goes back to what we talked about before. As a teacher, sometimes, teachers, we really don't have that confidence. Mm-hmm. We play a major role, but that aspect of our value, sometimes gets compromised, internally, And so for me to make that that jump to Capitol Hill and really learning something and seeing something on the highest level, really, gave me a degree of confidence that I'm on the right way, and what I believe in, is something that is worthy of others to believe in. That basically that we can create a STEM workforce that's diverse, and that that has equity in it, and that's for all people.
Absolutely. From what I've seen in your career, you were very zoomed in when you started your first teaching job, and every experience that you've had just has started to zoom out, just to show you what can be and what you're creating. And I love that you're doing professional development as well, because we all know that the day you stop learning is the day you start dying.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned to me how important it was to you to be part of the Galvanize and the startup community. Can you share your experience and why you think for other entrepreneurs and educators, why reaching out and becoming part of these communities is a helpful thing?
Yeah, that was really a strategic move. It was a great opportunity. Galvanize, was just starting, and I was just recommended to reach out to them to learn more about it. And once I got into the building And anybody who's been in Galvanize, you can feel the energy, as soon as you come in, the people, and that resonated with me. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I have that entrepreneurial spirit, and I spent a lot of time in Galvanize. Like, anybody over there that knows that was there from the beginning, if you ask them about me, yeah, I was there, late nights, mornings, every time, I was there. I should have just gave them my lease and really just lived in Galvanize. But, it gave me a community, and it really gave me the opportunity to be grounded in a community that had very, similar values, which was very important, for me to stay connected. I didn't want to lose that. I didn't want to lose that. Sometimes I felt a little, out of place to some degree, but, because it was specific as in education. But after a while, I really realized, no, we're one and the same,
Yeah. And just going through this conversation, same.
Yeah, same thing, using the lean startup model, just my perspective. And we've been fortunate to grow at a scale that would be determined to be successful, in any community, including the startup community. But Galvanize provided me with a place to connect with people, and also the resources. So it was very beneficial. And what I mean by that is, Galvanize has mentors. They have, people of multiple different capacities. When you start looking at attorneys, legal support, financial, support as far as CPAs, just different considerations. So the community was going through the same like growth that I was going through. So it was an opportunity to say, hey, what's going on? What are you guys doing? Oh, wow. And really share that information. So I think that provided me the opportunity to really grow, at a faster pace compared to if I was like siloed and just working in a cubicle or office, by ourselves.
Absolutely. So surround yourself, even if it's virtually right now, with people or on Slack.
Yeah.
So my last question before I get into a little different subject is, what are your hopes and dreams for the future of STEM education and creating a workforce and a pathway for autistic students? Like 20 years from now.
Oh, 20 years from now. I'm not sure if I can think that far 20 years from now. From this venture with Science Prep Academy, it's been wonderful. We have a lot of, great growth and great, discoveries as far as what we call, innovation. It may not be innovation as far as a software or application, but it's really, a discovery as far as gaps, things that work, things that don't work.
Yeah.
And I really see that, what we discovered can be shared to really, benefit, the community as a whole. When I say community, I mean, education is the foundation of the community. When you start talking about children, you're talking about households, you're talking about neighborhoods, but then also, what I really focus on is really the future of the workforce.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's something that's really overlooked. And that's one thing that I realized that we have to do a better job at, really figuring out, how can we create a better workforce? How can we prepare a better workforce?
How can we connect the two?
How can we connect the two?
Because I worked in ed tech and worked with tech professionals, and man, they were like, oh, I don't know what they're teaching them, but it's not working.
Exactly. And that's what they're saying.
Too.
Yeah. But if you talk to teachers, we're doing the greatest thing. We are just knocking it out the park.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's two separate buildings. They need a bridge.
Yeah, and so I've been able to, to have access to different conversations and start to build relationships. And what I'm finding is that within the tech world is tired. They're frustrated and they're tired. And they're resorting to their own initiatives to address the problem.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is you have companies like Google, Amazon that are challenging themselves, themselves as far as to create a workforce. So for instance, Google has initiatives for certification and helping individuals to get certified. Amazon has initiatives for just recently in Arizona, like the AWS, as far as partnering with different schools, colleges to get individuals certified in AWS. And you have the whole community as far as tech that's taking this initiative, this responsibility, which is not their responsibility, and it's outside of their business model, and they don't want to do it, but they're being forced to do it.
But that's what frustration does. It forces you to move things.
Yeah. And they see something. They see down the road that they have a shortage, and that shortage is going to be the detriment to their bottom line. If they can't have if Amazon can't have people certified in AWS, what's going to happen to future companies like Netflix that need that support. What's going to happen to innovation when we don't have the workforce to be able to support that? When we talk about Google and Amazon, and just the host of programming languages and anything else. So that's something I'm really concerned about, and I really want to position myself to be able to add value and add solutions to that long term. When you start talking about 10, 20 years out, that's because the school systems we're not getting it done. We have, if you look at like programs like code.org, things like that. Yeah, we have done a good job at increasing the engagement, the feel good aspect of, exposing kids to computer science and computer programming. But there's a difference between engagement or engaging kids, exposing students, K-12 of the world of, coding or block coding or drag and drop, and preparing them to make that transition into, a computer science career. There's a total difference. Yeah. And, I'm really concerned about who's taking that responsibility and really how can I, maybe, help to support individuals as a collective, to start to take that responsibility and support initiatives that really address it. Because what I find is kids who are in middle school, high school, it's the best time to expose them to computer science because they get hooked on it. And recently there's a lot of focus on career changing, which is great. But what I found that there's a difference between a person who changes career as far as their enthusiasm and their level of commitment, engagement to just their love for coding, compared to a middle school, high schooler who gets exposed. They will get hooked. And what separates good coders from the average coder is that passion, is that desire, that spark. And either you have it or you don't have it, and you can't. You know what I mean? It's almost like a sport. It's almost like a talent.
You can't force it. You can train all you want, but you might not be the same as the person that got that spark when he was great,
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember at Galvanize, I remember some people that would go through the coursework at Galvanize, and most of them would get, be done and they'd be out. But it was this one gentleman, he was from Taiwan, I remember. And he graduated and he still was there like 1, 2 o'clock. I was there too doing work. And I was like, what in the world are you doing here? Oh, I'm trying to perfect my code, I'm like, dude, what are you?
Yeah, that's the one.
But he went on to get a job at American Express, and I said, oh, okay, I see I see what's needed, so just trying to figure that out, so that's really what I'm passionate about right now, working with some good people. I've been talking to some people locally, about some opportunities, how we can start to, figure that out.
Excellent. Well, let's see if we have anyone that has a question, go ahead and pop it in the chat. If not, I have a few other questions for you. So if you have a question, pop it in. No worries if you don't. This has been an excellent conversation, and I'm personally intrigued with how you're transforming education. This goes to work-life balance. All entrepreneurs and educators, what are some secrets at keeping a good work-life balance? And do you?
Yeah. I try, but even still, when you try, you reach those points. But I live by a model now as far as rest, relax, and reflect. 3 R's.
Yeah. Don't
And
you think that's where you get your best ideas? Or just when you come down, and all of a sudden they just start flooding in your brain.
yeah. And when you're not, you get that blockage. You get that blockage. But the funny thing for me was two things. Funny thing was really relaxing. I didn't know how to relax.
Oh,
Oh,
me too.
yeah, I was lost. Relax. What do you mean
There's
relax?
stuff to do.
Because we define our success based upon completion of tasks, all the time.
Is there any other way?
uh, yeah, looking at my golf game, I could definitely find success, working on that. But relaxing. So just really having some things that find out what it is that allows you to relax. But then last, really having a schedule. We schedule everything, especially in this COVID days. We schedule our Zoom calls, we schedule every single thing. But are we scheduling, time to rest, proper rest time? Are we scheduling, time to relax? Is that on your calendar? Do you have time for reflection time, be it meditation or yoga? Is that on your calendar? Because if it's not, you're not going to find it. It's not just going to pop up out of anywhere. Oh, here goes the extra 15 minutes to relax and reflect.
You'll fill it with something else.
Yeah, like Netflix or Netflix is relaxing, but everybody needs a little time, Netflix time, but just making sure you include that into your schedule. I found that to be like, the most rewarding, the most healing, aspect of my life.
And creative. That's such a part of the
Yeah.
creative process. You are a passionate cryptocurrency and blockchain advocate. I interviewed the founder or CEO of Dash. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's on YouTube. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
His
Wow.
answer for what the future looked like blew my mind. It was mind blowing. So if I have it, I'll send it to you. But
yeah, I missed that one.
What sparked this passion?
What sparked it? I think about 2, 3 years ago with Bitcoin, just hearing about it, looking at the increase in value, the potential to make money, right? The potential to make money. But just getting into the sector, I started going to different meetup groups and stuff like that. I really got a little geeky with it, which is my comfort zone. Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. But I met with some good people. They were like, dude, like, I'm not worried about the money consideration. I'm interested in this technology.
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, what do you mean? Yeah, this future, this technology, this blockchain, the technology that can come out of blockchain. And it took me a while to really process what that person was telling me. In about 6 years, I just started looking at it, and then I think I got exposed to a particular company called Ripple, which has a relationship with a coin called XRP, and their focus was on cross-border transactions. And I started looking at a lot of the partnerships that they had and a lot of the things that they were working on. And I started just looking at the technology and the potential of the technology. And then I just started looking, researching. And it just, at first it was a lot of like conversations about, fraudulent activities and money laundering and those type of things. And most people are really like, oh, don't want to deal with anything like that. But through time, I just kept, digging. And particularly with me looking at future careers, for the future, for youth, for kids, and I'm really seeing like, how could I have to understand this because, now we're talking, this is real information, like data. If you do some research, you'll see that, on the highest levels, for example, the International Monetary Fund and central banks throughout the world, are making a transition to include digital assets. The United States of America, the U.S. A couple months ago, has enacted policy, for banks to be able to hold cryptocurrency, and
It's coming.
yeah, and one other thing is within the next month we're talking about, there's a conversation right now as far as banks to actually hold wallets, digital wallets, not to get too deep into it, but it makes sense. If you look at countries like China, China has a digital yuan right now, a digital currency, right now that they're piloting, so this is not speculation, or this is not, this is really a time to really address it. So, so it keeps me busy, researching and it gives.
It's your new motorized car. I mean, that's what you started with. And like you move on. This is your new motorized car that you're breaking apart. You're looking at the pieces. How does it go together?
Yeah, and there's a lot of future, opportunities, when it comes to like, the technology is blockchain, right? And when we talk about blockchain, and AI, and it relates to AI as well, so I'm just going to keep an eye to it, but it's a whole community of people that's, interested in it, and I just got sucked into it. My wife was concerned at first. She's like, "Why are you watching all these YouTube videos on this? What's wrong with you?"
Adam has a question for you. He says, "What do you think?" I might butcher this name. Urethrum? Ethrum? ETHEREUM.
Oh, Ethereum.
See, butchered it. What do you think of that? Thanks, Adam.
Again, I don't take a stance as far as being an expert. I'm just a researcher. Ethereum, has played a major role in blockchain, but they're coming out with a new platform. So some people say that their platform is a little slower. So everything's about that transaction, the speed, just like computers. Everything is about the speed and the faster transaction. So within the blockchain, you want to be able to make transactions as fast as possible. So I think Ethereum, they have some updates coming out, so everybody's really excited. And then, there's some platforms that there's some technology that uses that platform that are very interesting. But then there's a couple other ones. One particular one is a platform called Stellar, which is gaining attention in different aspects, and then so so there's I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I used to not really talk about it. I even feel uncomfortable talking about it right now. But for those people,
we've exposed your deep dark secrets. Well, to end our talk, I'm going to do a fun speed round, and this is just to get to know you personally better, just to get to know you. So we'll end on a light note. But before we end, it's been such a pleasure. I'm just so excited to see how you move forward with this, and I can't wait to share this video with everyone. And the plug that you just did for Galvanizing Seed Spot, wow. I'm sure they'll be sharing this.
Oh yeah.
All right. Favorite vacation spot?
I say it's the most recent one I went to, which would be, the Sea of Cortez and Rocky Point.
Favorite food?
Falafels.
Ooh,
Yeah,
that's a new one. I haven't had that one said yet. What's your what's your favorite app on your phone?
Man, I would say my calendar app because I use it the most.
Yeah, but that's not fun.
That's boring, right? But I would say, as it goes to cryptocurrencies, there's an app called CoinMarketCap. So I've been getting a lot of use out of that particular app.
I knew there was a better one than the calendar app. Mac or PC?
PC.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, look at this rapid question round. I'm not even rapid questioning. What's one thing on your bucket list
that I have not done, or that I have
not done?
Man, let's see. I have not done. I do want to go to China. So I'm not sure when,
Yeah.
but I do
Okay.
want to go, yeah, someday, So I'm looking forward to just experiencing China and just seeing the magnitude. So,
And the last question, favorite part about Arizona?
oh man, how could it not be the sunshine, the sun,
Yeah.
not the sun in August, but the sun
No,
in
right
December.
now.
It's really we're entering December, and it's really the best time to be here, and it makes it worthwhile, right? It makes
Oh, we're all happy.
yeah,
All happy.
yeah, yeah,
There's a world pandemic, but we still live in Arizona in the winter.
yeah, yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on tonight.
Thank you, thank
It's
you.
been so inspirational. I wrote down a few things for
Okay,
myself, and
okay.
I hope everyone else that sees this will too. Keep us updated, and we can't wait to see how you share all of your research with the world. I think it's going to make the future of the workforce even better. So,
Oh yeah, and I'm excited. I'm excited about you. I know you said you're going to make the transition, so I'm excited to see what you have in store. So let's stay in
yes,
contact, and I appreciate this opportunity.
absolutely. Well, someday we'll meet in person. Until then, have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.